And to hear me talk about it, I will sound like a crazy person because to explain this thing doesn't make sense. Podcast. Welcome to the eCoustics podcast. This is Brian Mitchell, your host and founder of ecoustics.com. And today our topic is a 2025 year in review. Essentially, the key things that move the needle in 2025 across the home and portable electronics landscape. And of course, we will include some of our truly standout Editor's Choice Product Award winners of 2025. And I'm grateful to be joined by a large group from the acoustics team, which I'll introduce as we get to their topic areas of expertise, along with our podcast producer, Mitchapalooza Anderson.
Hey, thanks,
Mitch.
Brian. Hello. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
I am excited about this one.
Me too.
And in 2025 alone, I think Acoustics covered more AV trade shows and audio events than any other publication. And that was cool. 8 in-person shows, over a dozen private industry events and sneak peeks around the world. And if we didn't learn about it, see it, hear it, then I'm not sure who else did. And to start us off on this episode of what impressed us most in 2025, let's begin in the home theater categories. And with that, I'll welcome our editor-at-large, Chris Boylan.
Hey, Chris, how's it going, guys? Happy to join the crew. So I guess, Brian, what you're saying is if we weren't there, it didn't happen.
Probably.
And we were there a lot. So home theater, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the display side of things because I think we have some other audio gurus in the team. They're probably going to talk a little bit about the audio side of home theater. And the big news, I think, in TVs was it had to be the RGB backlights for LED TVs or LED LCD TVs. I first saw one about a year ago in Japan. Sony had a prototype that looked amazing. What they're doing is they're changing the backlight assembly for an LCD TV. Instead of using white or blue lights, they're using red, green, and blue lights, and that allows them to create more colors more efficiently, almost replicate the quality of OLED in a cheaper to manufacture panel that can be much larger than an OLED. We've already seen RGB LED LCD TVs from Samsung and Hisense that are 115 and 116 inches from a single pane of mother glass. So that's impressive. About the largest OLED we've ever seen is about 97 inches, and they're very expensive. So I think that's going to be a theme for CES. We've already seen production panels from TCL, not from TCL. Well, TCL, yes, in China, not yet in the United States. But we have seen production panels from Hisense and Samsung, prototype from Sony. LG just today or yesterday announced they're going to have RGB mini LED LCD TVs as well at CES and moving forward. But I don't think this is going to really steal the thunder from OLED. Regular readers and viewers know I still love OLED. It still has the best black levels. Every single pixel on an OLED TV can light up or turn off or be anywhere in between. And when you're looking at high contrast images, anything with deep blacks, star fields, credits, white text scrolling on a black background, that's something that's still hard for any LED LCD TV, including an RGB TV, to reproduce. So I think OLED's going to get a run for its money. There will be more and more of these RGB LED LCD TVs on the market next year from probably from Samsung, certainly from LG, possibly from Sony, possibly from TCL in the US market. So I'm looking forward to seeing them and how they advance. Last year's models were pretty impressive, but I don't think they're going to take away the top tier in display performance from OLED, not with the advances that OLED itself is also making.
So do you think part of the 2025 theme was also prices coming down a bit, especially in the larger sizes, more budget range models?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Black Friday, we saw $1,000 98-inch TVs. I mean, that's unheard of before this year. And I say that every year. Last year, I think it was $1,500. The year before, it was $2,500. So $1,000 98-inch TV is hard to would have been hard to imagine just 5 years ago. But with big competition coming in from Hisense and TCL from China, those prices have been dropping like stones. And I guess that kind of transitions into the next category I was going to mention, and that's UST projectors, ultra short throw projectors, which are also called laser TVs because they can sit very close to a wall, create a huge image, 100, 120, 150 images. They usually have built-in streaming, built-in speakers. 3-4 years ago, these were really popular because a 98-inch TV at that time was like upwards of $10,000. But now with a 98-inch TV for $1,000, $2,000, with a 115-inch TV, with RGB backlighting from Hisense at $20,000, I mean, that's still out there. And I think that's what the real opportunity is going to remain for these UST projectors. When you want to go bigger than 100-inch and you don't want to drop 20 or 30 grand. So Hisense introduced a new flagship, what I checked out at the UST Showdown event in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, and it was very impressive. 5,000 lumens. When they put it on an anti-light rejecting screen, an ALR screen, it was glare-free. You know, even when they turned the room lights on, it was still a beautiful image. So I think there's still a niche for UST projectors, but it's really, they're going to have to offer strong value propositions. Like, you know, there's an XJimmy that's about $2,000. They can do a 150-inch screen. That's still good value. And at that price, you might be able to add a motorized screen that completely disappears when it's not in use. So you got Samsung, they've got frame TVs that look like art when they're not on, but a projector can make your screen completely disappear when it's not on. So if you have real artwork on the wall, that could be behind your projection screen and you get the best of both worlds. Hit a button, the screen appears, huge, you know, dynamic, exciting to look at image, and then you press a button and it goes away when it's not in use.
So I know we don't know sales of all the companies, but who do you think, just based on your touch points to the market, who do you think gained and won or lost across the major TV brands in 2025?
In a certain size or just in general?
Yeah, no, yeah, in general, like who had a better year from your vantage point in terms of, I mean, you could base it on any factor that you want, but just.
I mean, the final numbers aren't available because they haven't really finalized yet. I mean, there's still a couple of weeks left in the 2025 year. But I would think, from what I've seen, that TCL and Hisense continue to grow. Samsung probably remained where it was roughly, but at like 30% of the market, they're already the dominant TV maker in the North American market. I think the number is right around 30%. I wonder if LG might have lost a little bit of ground. There was some, kerfuffle early on with the TV shootout that happened early in the year, where the firmware and the software on the LG TV wasn't quite perfect, so it didn't do as well in that event as it probably could have had they held the event about a month later when they fixed some of these issues with firmware. I wonder if LG might have lost a little bit of ground, but that is speculation. Sony has never had huge market share, even though they're well known for being about the best you can buy, and they're still making excellent TVs. But they don't have as many TVs in the mass market. TCL and Hisense have tons of TVs in the mass market. Samsung also, huge distribution network, huge selection of TVs. So I would say, Samsung is, I would say, still number one. But number 2 and 3 and 4 are probably up for grabs. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that is. I mean, it doesn't affect my opinion. I'm going to buy the best. Doesn't matter if it's an LG, a Panasonic, Sony, or a Samsung. I'm just going to buy the best, or at least review the best, and try to delay sending it back as long as I possibly can.
Well, that was going to be I was going to say, like, I was more interested in your opinion than the sales numbers.
Yeah.
And so would your opinion be that Samsung had the most advanced year or the best outlook of the year for you?
In terms of the best TV of the year, I awarded that to the Sony OLED, the Bravia 8 Mark II, because I thought overall it had the best feature set and the best picture quality.
Cool.
But they're using Samsung panels. They're using the Samsung Display QD OLED panel. So Samsung still wins in that case, right? I mean, at least on the display side. Samsung's real claim to fame right now is they're trying to be, I guess, less of a tech company, more of a lifestyle company. They want their TVs to blend in. The Art TV, which is basically frame TV, is basically a picture frame when it's off. It really looks like artwork. Have you guys seen it? Have you guys seen a frame on display?
I haven't seen one in person.
You have to see it in person because the matte screen really makes it look like they're real brush strokes. Like
Ealan, you own one?
Yeah.
Ealan, you have one?
Yeah, we have one above our fireplace because 80% of the time we don't use it.
Right.
So it's artwork the rest of the time. So yeah, that was the trade-off. It's like, we don't watch this all the time. We get like a small window once the kids go to bed. Yeah. And that's about it. So we wanted it to be art otherwise. And
so when people make the trek out to your domicile, do they think, wow, that's a great painting? Or do they comment on it?
Sometimes, yeah.
I think I first saw it at CD a couple of years ago, and I was very impressed at how much it looked like a painting or photograph when it was off. Now, the trade-off is it isn't the strongest performer for movies.
Correct. It might be the most talked about screen on our podcast.
It probably is. And
I think it is.
The Frame Pro did improve things. It's got what's called local dimming, but it still uses edge lighting because they're trying to keep it as slim as possible. They want it to be really, really slim, so it hangs like right up next to the wall. So you can get some really high performance TVs from Samsung, but the Frame is not the best for picture performance. It does the other stuff extremely well, though. So if it's a question between being able to get a TV in the living room or not, then get a Frame or a Frame Pro, because at least you'll still have a TV for when it's not, looking sexy, displaying artwork.
On the other end of the budget scale, what would be some of your picks for a TV if you're like a real budget consumer looking for a lower cost TV, not too big? What are your suggestions there?
I would still probably go for an OLED because right around the holidays, you can get a 55 to 65 inch OLED TV for anywhere from $750 to about $1,100. And that's not too much to pay, I think, for a really high quality TV. Now, you're not going to get the top of the line, the highest brightness. It may not be suitable for, sun streaming in through the window. But you're going to get those black levels from OLED that I love so much. And so specifically, I would say the Z85A from Panasonic, which is about $800 in the 55 inch or $1,100 in a 65 inch, is an excellent OLED TV. And the LG B5, maybe even a little less. That's about $1,000 right now for a 65 inch. And TCL and Hisense make amazing, super bright mini LED TVs that if you're watching in a bright room, they're a much better choice. But if you have the power to like close the drapes, turn off the lights, I'm still recommending an entry level OLED over maybe a mid-tier LED TV.
Gotcha.
And Chris, anything else in the video category that you wanted to highlight this year?
Well, I did want to shout out to Kaleidescape because Kaleidescape was always something that I lusted after, but thought that's some other guy's thing because it's just, it's a rich man's toy. It's the most amazing ecosystem. Like, if you love movies, Kaleidescape is awesome because it basically captures hard drive copies, server copies of all your favorite movies that are instantly available. If you want to do a highlights reel with all your favorite movie quotes from Stripes and Caddyshack and everything and just run all together in a montage, it's so easy to set that up on a Kaleidescape. And the quality is really about as good as UHD Blu-ray. It's really about as good as physical media because it doesn't stream, it downloads, and it downloads very large files. I think it's the 1 terabyte. The 1 terabyte Strato V player only holds about 10 movies. So that's like talking about 100 gigabytes per movie. And that's really roughly around the same size as a UHD Blu-ray. So you're getting the benefit of physical media with really high quality 4K with Dolby Vision and lossless audio, Dolby Atmos and DTSX. But the convenience of instant access and no need to put a couple hundred movies on the shelf like many of us have. So, and this year they lowered the price of admission again. Let me show you a couple of things. I brought props. This here is the Kaleidescape Strato V, which was around 5,000. I think. Is it? Brian, do you know the exact price?
It's 4,500 right now.
4,500, right? It started at 4,000 and it's up to 4,500. And then they just come out with this little guy, which is also 4K, Dolby Vision, lossless audio, all the good stuff. Instead of 10 movies, it holds 5 movies, but this one's only $3,000. So for $3,000, you can get a taste of the Kaleidescape ecosystem, instant access to all your favorite movies. Yes, you will have to buy them again. But Kaleidescape does cool stuff like you can scan in the Blu-ray that you already own and then get the digital copy for a pretty low price. So I love seeing something that was, exclusively for really well-to-do people in the past, kind of coming more into the mainstream and allowing other people to enjoy this Kaleidescape experience. Because I'm a fan. I've liked it for a long time, but only recently started actually using it at home, and I love it.
I distinctly remember the first time we talked about Kaleidescape on the podcast because we were talking about luxury outdoor speakers, and the conversation changed over to putting stuff on yachts. And then you brought up Kaleidescape, and you mentioned, I think, $60,000 at the time for what they had to offer. It was like a astronomical amount of money. So to hear it go down to $3,000 from where, was it 20,000? Was it, in my head, it was 60,000. Might have been 6 million for all I know.
So the ones that go on yachts are probably going to be in the $60,000 to $100,000 range.
Yeah, so I'm not far off.
Yeah, no, because what they charge for is the server space. You can't just plug in your old, Samsung UHD. I mean, you can't plug in a USB hard drive, and expect it to work. You actually have to use these Kaleidescape branded secure industrial quality servers to house the movies, because the agreement that they made with the studios is that this environment would be locked down, DRM protected. Nothing could be pirated. Early in the days when Kaleidescape first founded, they encouraged people to rip their own DVDs. And they got into a lot of trouble for that because the CSS people said that's a violation of the user agreement. And there was multi-year lawsuit that eventually got settled. And part of that settlement was they no longer allow you to rip your Blu-rays. But if you had the older gear, you can still use those rips. Anyway, it's complicated. But there is still a mechanism now, though, that they can read that you already own a Blu-ray disc. It'll scan the code from the disc and then give you a cheaper version of that digital copy.
That's cool.
So now, so from what had been maybe the cheapest entry-level price was about $12,000, let's say a year and a half ago. Now for $3,000, you can get a player with 5 movies built in. When you're tired of watching those, you can just, delete them and download something else from the cloud. All your purchases are stored in the cloud, so you can access them whenever you want. But when people are putting them on a boat, they need local copies of the movies, right? So they're buying large servers. Exactly. Because you may not be able to get internet in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific, unless you got Starlink, like Ealan.
All right, that's a good transition over to Mr. Acoustically Speaking, Ealan Osborne, who I think has a few thoughts to expand on the home theater and home entertainment standouts this year.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's actually been, as far as the home theater sector and audio is concerned, it's actually been a really tough year. 2025 has been a lot of promises that haven't been fulfilled and prices that have gone drastically up because of tariffs. It was right around June, July, I would want to say, in the summertime. Because I remember about a year ago, I got sent from Sony their flagship AZ7000ES AVR. And I reviewed it. And then I've just been kind of watching the price ever since, just because I have it in my possession. So it's just been on my mind. And I didn't realize it. And then I just decided, you know what, I'm going to check out the price of this. For the longest time, it was $3,300 retail. And then when I checked it in July, $4,200.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, and I think it currently is back up to $4,200. It went down a little bit for some holiday sales, but now it's back up to $4,200. And I think it's just going to sit there for who knows how long at that price. So, man, that really sucks because unlike the video side of things, like Chris was saying, a lot of these prices for TVs nowadays are really attainable. And you can actually get a really nice TV for not spending a lot of money.
Right.
You can't say that about the audio side. It is actually harder to get a really nice, especially if you're wanting an actual surround sound system with an AVR and actual speakers to connect to it. Soundbars, yes, they have also gone up. Like, again, Sony's Bravia Theater Quad, that price has gone up. Even their soundbars like the Bravia Bar 9 and Bar 8, those prices have gone up. Even Sony's cameras. I've been wanting to upgrade my camera for doing, various social media things, and those have gone up as well. So I'm like, wow. I don't know if they're just out to get Sony or if that's across the board.
No, I think that's all tariff related price increases for sure. But yeah, we have seen it across the board. I would say, just because I've been tracking some of this too, the biggest product change that I've seen is from Bang & Olufsen, because they've been coming out with new versions of pretty much the same speaker in different colors. And their original version from 10 years ago, their flagship model, okay, hold your seats, was $78,000. But now the same speaker in some new colors is up to $211,000.
Oh my
So
God.
it's like almost tripled in 10 years, which some of that's tariff, but not all of it.
Right.
But that's, in terms of prices, we've seen it everywhere, from sound bars, bookshelf speakers, receivers, like you said. So we hear you. I think consumers are watching this happen and they're kind of stuck. Do they go for the next year's model? Do they wait? They're kind of, but I'll let you continue, Ealan, but I just wanted to kind of chime in on a price increase that kind of caught my eye.
I know, just to also kind of talk about the promises that were made and haven't come to fruition yet. I mean, I know stuff takes time, like especially Google Eclipsa, their proprietary immersive audio format that they just announced. We did a video on it, and eCoustically speaking video on it back in January. So it's been almost a year. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen a demo. Although I think, Chris, didn't you get a demo of Eclipsa at some point?
Yeah,
earlier
actually
this year?
At CES,
that's right.
2025 in January, they were doing demos.
That's what we talked about it. Yep.
On modified TVs that the YouTube player had been modified to pass Eclipsa audio.
That's what I was right.
But two of the demos they were showing us were not really Eclipsa. They were PCM, which meant there was no height channel involved because they were downloading the stuff to existing soundbars that had not been upgraded to support decoding of that actual Eclipsa stream.
Yeah.
Eclipsa.
Eclipsa,
yeah. It's not as bad a name as Perplexity, which they're putting on their TVs. Hello, what? It's like, I'm perplexed. Let's call our AI Perplexity. Sorry. But Eclipsa audio I'm very excited about it, but you're right. Nothing happened really in 2025 to get that content onto YouTube, or more importantly, or as importantly, get it into products so that the products can actually decode this stuff. So we have another demo scheduled for CES in a couple of weeks, and we'll see what kind of progress they've made. Hopefully some.
Yeah.
Because
the other disappointment is DTS-X Profile 2 and that rollout. It is still exclusively on, certain Hisense and TCL and Sony TVs.
Just Sony. The TCLs don't work yet.
Oh, really?
Sony Hisense, I think they do. But the TCL one, the models are supposed to support it. They're getting a fix potentially in January or February to support it.
Goodness. And they still haven't, there's still no DTS-X Profile 2 support on any streamers, like a Roku streamer or Apple TV.
Yep.
So I'm still disappointed that in 2025, we still don't have a sound bar that can wirelessly connect to physical speakers that you can magnetize to the ceiling. That would be my go-to soundbar if that were possible. I just don't, I really don't prefer upward firing audio and having it bounce off the ceiling. I've heard it. It's just not that good to me, to my ears, to my level of expectation. So as soon as soundbars can come out with some sort of actual physical height channels that you can mount on your ceiling somehow, that's going to be the game changer. And I'm surprised nobody has come out with that in 2025. Maybe CES, somebody will wow us with something that they've been keeping secret for a long time. But
right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would love to be able to put real height speakers on a soundbar because some of them sound great, for regular surround sound.
Yeah.
But if you're bouncing sound off the ceiling, you need a very specific ceiling height, reflectivity, sit in a certain spot to really get the best effect. And nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up the video category or even home theater as well, is there any between you, Chris and Ealan, any really standout product that you want to highlight of the year that really made a jump either in price, performance, something along that line?
Just give us anything, guys, for the love of God.
All right. I will throw one thing in there because has been impressive to me. I have had Denon's AVR-X3800H for like 2.5 years. And every year it gets a little bit better. And this year it got a lot better because they rolled out Dirac ART, active room treatment, which is, Dirac's best room optimization software. I haven't implemented it yet, so I can't give you hands-on advice that it's amazing. I have heard it in Denon products at demos, and it is amazing. It really does compensate well for the speaker's interaction with the room and the interaction with each other. But what I love about it is that this was a receiver that Denon put out like 2.5 years ago, and it's still relevant. It's not following that built-in obsolescence model of it's going to be obsolete by the following year. So kudos to Denon for actually keeping one of their best, highest value products relevant for years. And yes, to Elan's earlier point, it's more expensive now than it was a year ago. But around the holidays, it was down to about $1,400, which isn't a lot for I think it's a 9 or 11 channel receiver. I think it's 9, but upgradable to 11 if you add a stereo power amp. So great little receiver, a little bit of an investment, but excellent bang for the buck, and just happy to see that they're keeping it relevant without making it obsolete.
Ealan,
anything?
Honestly, that was honestly what I was about to go to as well as Dirac ART. But it's just the fact that they've been promising, ART is going to be trickling down to other manufacturers and other lower cost things. You don't have to have a storm audio, which is 18 grand or whatever it is. So I'm pretty stoked that I haven't gotten it on my unit, but my Marantz AV10 now does support that. So that's pretty cool. So that's all I got to say.
And just real quickly, for those that don't know what Dirac is, Chris, can you give them just like a real quick rundown of what it does, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So I don't want to leave that. It's kind of
so there are a lot of solutions on the market that allow you to address the elephant in the room in most systems, which is the actual room itself, right? So a lot of people will spend thousands of dollars on speakers and thousands of dollars on amplifiers and nothing on a room treatment. And they'll put their speakers in the worst, most reflective, haphazardly shaped room and expect the best results. And it just doesn't work that well that way. Physics, matter. So what Audeze and Dirac do is they compensate for that by measuring the room with microphones from multiple locations, and then they adjust the phase and the loudness or the level amplitude of each speaker to cancel out the negative impacts of the room. And what's different about ART is that it doesn't just work on the room itself, but it uses all of the speakers working together to compensate for each other, if that makes any sense, right? Where it makes the most impact is in the low bass, because bass nodes and standing waves can really destroy bass response. It can make it really boomy in one part of the room, and 3 feet away, it's a null and you hear no bass at all. So what these systems do is, again, they measure the room from multiple points to see what the frequency response is from each one of the individual speakers. And then they algorithmically fix that so that each speaker kind of contributes to a good overall sonic blend across every room or every seat in the house. So it is cool. It is advanced. I've heard the difference, with the before and after. And it's not going to make a $1,000 speaker, sound like a $10,000 speaker, but it's going to make a system work together a lot better than it would by just plopping it in the room and flipping the power switch.
All right. Well, I do have one more home theater pick, but I'm going to save that for the end. But right now, we're going to jump over to our...
Stay tuned to the end. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Headphone editor, William Jennings. What's been happening in the portable audio space in 2025?
Well, to touch on a couple of things you already brought up. First, the price tags. We've seen those explode. The idea of a $5,000 and $8,000 headphone a few years ago would have had everybody running for the aisles, and today people are getting conditioned to those price tags, and it's kind of a scary thing. So that's one of them. And two, to hear Chris explain Dirac and that kind of thing, I look at it from sort of the computer perspective and say, okay, this is another example of machine learning. And, AI has certainly been a buzzword worldwide. But some of these technologies that we're using daily like that are, basically children of that. And we're seeing them come into daily use in everyday life. Dirac is one of them. Mm-hmm. The advancements in noise canceling is another. And if I had to pick a trend for 2025, as far as the headphone world, that's it. Everybody is chasing Sony and the XM6 as far as, how good can you make ANC? And as we're seeing the chips advance and the technology advance, we're seeing the products come out improving on that as well. I think that's one you're going to see everybody in the headphone world stick on the top of best of lists this year. I'm kind of going a little counter to that in that I didn't like the build quality as well and didn't think it was as comfortable as some others on the market. If you want the absolute best ANC, that's it. Go get it. If you want something that beats the crap out of it and build quality is more comfortable and drops off just a step as far as the ANC is concerned, I think Bowers and Wilkins headphones are absolutely worth looking at in that same price point. But I think the buzzwords for the year were wireless and ANC. I mean, it's, everybody has those out, and it's not a matter of, if you're serious about sound, you go to wired anymore. They're, the big names like Focal are now coming out with a Batiste MG that's another step up the ladder as far as sound quality and things are concerned in a wireless platform. We're getting there. So I think that's, that's the starting point for 2025 was everybody was clamoring for better wireless and better noise canceling. And we've seen pretty much everybody come out with models in that line.
So would Bowers and Wilkins be like your pick?
Both the Px7 S3 and the Px8 S2 are fantastic headphones, no doubt.
What are the price points on those, roughly?
You pin me to the wall. I think 6 and 8, 6 and 9, maybe.
100 or 1,000?
Yes, 100. No, the $8,000 one is the HiFi Mansusvara unveiled that a couple of us reviewed here over the course of this year, and that I think that one does set a kind of a record for mainstream headphones into the stratosphere price wise. That's but no, they're in the 600-800 range. Honestly, they're both a little more expensive than what you're paying for the Sony, but like I said, the build quality on the Sony is plastic fantastic. The build quality on the Bowers and Wilkins is boutique stuff. So
that's cool. But where do you see it going, Will? Like the technology is at what it's at right now, and you've heard all of the years of progression to where we are in 2025. Like, what do you see not just 2026, but like 2035? I mean, only 10 years up.
Honestly, I don't know that I could tell you 10 years out. It's changed so fast that it's tough to guess. I think the things that we're seeing, one, people are kind of realizing that there is such thing as good enough. For years, everybody said, wireless is never going to be as good as wired. Yeah, they're probably right, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe by the end of 2035, you're there.
We got there.
But for the next couple of years, you're not going to be there. But the reality is, unless you have a quiet listening room, you have a lot of equipment, and you don't have kids running around screaming and everything else. you're not really getting the benefit out of that anyway. So I think there is a realization coming to a lot of people that, hey, I don't have to have the best possible thing on the planet to listen with my screaming children in the background or while I'm on the bus or, you know, whatever your day entails.
Right.
So I think that's one thing that and so Bluetooth has gotten better. People have gotten the realization that maybe I don't need the absolute pinnacle of sound quality while I'm out for a jog or that kind of thing. And they've kind of met each other in the middle. I think the next thing that happens is people realize they don't really need all that much ANC all the time. You know, that there's a lot of push right now for who does it best, who does it best, who does it best. And Sony and Bose keep trading blows with each other and beating each other up over who can, you know, get, you know, a half decibel lower in some particular frequency range. But the reality is, you know, most of us, if we can get the background noise out of it enough to not be distracting, that's all we're hoping for.
Sure.
You know,
right.
So I think this trend right now toward ever better and better ANC is probably going to get to that point where people realize that it's a little bit like the wireless. How good is good enough? How much more do I really need? And there comes a point where some of these products are now competing with the previous generation of their product.
Sure.
You know, that if I have the XM5, do I really need the 6? You know, if I've got the Quiet Comfort, do I really need the Gen 2? You know, and as we progress, I think that's the thing where increasingly people are going to say no.
So, right. Well, sorry to interrupt, but the Px7 S3 is actually available for a little over $400 right now. So,
okay,
not too bad. It's about the same price as the XM6 Sony, but the PX8 S2 is, like you said, $800. So,
yeah,
point of diminishing returns, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, the 8 is fantastic. The 7 S3, I think, is the match for the Sony as far as if you want this, you know, the same price and the build quality. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So what about in earbuds? We've also seen some expansion into open ear architecture this year. What's happening in the earbud space?
I hesitate to say we've expanded into that because earbuds have always been around. There's always been some small part of the market that was doing that. I think what's really happened is you've got a couple of the titans of the industry figuring out that while everybody is chasing ANC, there are a few people that are saying, no, I need transparency. You know, if I'm going out for a jog, I want to hear the car behind me or the things like that. You know, I need that. So you had Bose release their ear cuff design. That's the first non-ANC product out of Bose in a lot of years in the in-ear market. You had Sony with the LinkBuds Fit. You know, that was a donut shape that offered the same kind of thing. So I think there is that piece of the market that's looking at transparency being the big selling point. And the downside to all of those, of course, are when you don't seal the ear canal, you lose about 80% of your bass just immediately. Yep. So while some of them are doing a good job of it, I was, impressed with what bass was there on things like the Bose. You're never going to get the same thing out of it that you're going to out of a sealed design. So the selling point for the open earbud has kind of always been stage. The thing you lose when you seal the ear canal like that is any sense of stage being anything other than minute. And whether it was the old style earbuds, whether it was the first generation of the Apple earbuds that didn't seal, all of those typically have a better sound stage as far as both size and proportion than what you're going to get in the sealed units. So for people where transparency is a big issue, for people where stage is a big issue, they offer something different and they're well worth trying out.
So I also saw some trend in the dongle market.
There are a couple of them, I think.
Because I think one of the holdups or one of the things holding back a little bit of the wireless is Apple's reluctance to adapt any of the higher bandwidth Bluetooth standards. So if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you're not getting the highest quality wireless transmission right now. Did I explain that right?
Oh yeah. No, Apple's reliance on AAC is still, is a drawback to sticking with the Apple ecosystem if you're really after high-end fidelity. Will they fix it? Yeah, probably about the same time Spotify gets their lossless stuff all figured out. Again, I think we get into that. There are a whole lot of people where simple and easy to use is more important than the absolute end of it. And I think most people with the Apple ecosystem are going for that. I plug it in, it just works. I don't have to think about it. And that's really kind of been their niche. But yeah, there is a drawback there. There's still a drawback to the other Bluetooth protocols that are out right now, in that, there are some that are technically lossless, but they're still very infantile in the market. There's a lot of some work, some don't. There's a lot of, you have to have firmware that agrees. I've got a couple of them that do support LC3 that don't work with the Samsung S25, which is kind of the standards bearer. If you can't work with that phone, you're cutting off a lot of your market. So I think, there's still growth room there, and there is still room for Bluetooth protocols to improve. But I do think we're going to see some, Apple at some point is going to have to make a jump or risk losing some segment of the market that's more interested in better audio quality wirelessly. I do think the plus for them this year was going to the USB-C port, opened up a lot of dongles that were not happy previously. With working with Lightning. And part of it was that while Lightning and USB, at least in theory, shared a lot of commonality, Lightning ran at a lower voltage typically than USB. Mm-hmm. So even if you had a dongle that was typical or, was expecting USB and 5 volt, 500 milliamp on Lightning, it was likely to be getting 4.2 volts. And in a lot of cases, they just simply didn't work very well in that environment. So by switching the standard where they're having to comply with a true USB standard, it does open them up to a lot more dongle support and that kind of thing. I think, to me, the interesting thing this year with dongles was, one, sort of the lack thereof in some regards. We didn't see a flood of new models from everybody coming out like we did the year previous. But what we did see were more higher end stuff. You had the HiFi Kensai, you had Kayan bringing out a couple of new models that, in the higher end, and you also had a few new models that are sort of bringing back the idea of a DAC amp. I would say the RU9 that we just got done reviewing, the Questyle Sigma. I'm not sure I qualify those as dongles when they're the size of a deck of cards or bigger. When they're coming close to the size of your phone, at that point, you're back into DAC amp territory. And we're kind of seeing that pendulum swing back that, it's okay to build a bigger box if you want longer battery life or better quality or things like that. Whereas there'd been this sort of push to make everything the size of a pack of gum.
Right. So real quickly, just to highlight, you gave us the wireless picks. Any dongle go-to picks that if you're trying to upgrade your phone's default Bluetooth, where do you point people?
Really like the Questyle. If you're trying to, particularly, to your point about Apple here a minute ago, Questyle came out with a couple of little dongles this year that offer LDAC to Apple users. So for the first time, you're not limited to what Apple builds into their ecosystem.
Interesting.
Questyle really kind of came out with a cool little product for that. A couple others, there's a Creative, has another little one that's just barely bigger than a USB plug that works nicely with old laptops to add both LC3 and LDAC. Sennheiser's is more geared toward specific Sennheiser products. So, because you need the app if you're really going to get everything out of it, but they make one as well. So we're starting to see some, I wouldn't really call them dongles, but little USB adapters that bring those Bluetooth protocols to a bigger market. And I think particularly, like I said, the little Creative for laptop use, because almost no laptops have LDAC or aptX. And that little Questyle for the Apple environments, they're a neat trick. And for less than $100 on that Questyle for me, if you're going to run other than an Apple AirPod with an Apple phone, it's an easy add.
Hey, Will, what was my only question to you? Like, you've reviewed more headphones, dongles, DACs, earbuds than anybody I've ever met in my life. If cost no object, out of all the stuff that's gone through your place like this year, what would be like your favorite? Like one thing, what would be the one you had to take away from this year?
Oh, I think I can make that call easily, and that is I was terribly impressed with the Carbon 2 from Audeze. That is one hell of a headphone. Just amazing.
6K, right?
Yeah, 6K. Yeah. So
okay.
it's a little bit like your TV that you see how long you can hold on to before you send back. But amazing electrostatic headphones, solved a lot of the problems that electrostatics typically have with, layering I've lost the word now.
Like the membrane?
Well, typically the conductive layer is actually layered on top of the membrane rather than in it, which sooner or later separates. And it's one of those things where if you have an old stack system or something like that, having to take care of it and keep it away from moisture and do all the things you have to do with it because of that potential separation has always been a problem. So building one that doesn't have that problem because it can't, is something where if you're going to throw 6K at it, at least you have some guarantee that it ought to last a while, which I think ought to be important to a lot of people who are doing that. When you start looking at putting that kind of money into a system, if it's once every 25 years, okay. That's
well, I'm happy I asked. I didn't expect that answer. That was cool.
But that one to me was the standout of the year as far as sound quality.
And I did get to hear that one. I was lucky enough to get one of the first demos of it. And yeah, like you said, Will, I mean, incredible headphone. So, but it's not a headphone that you just plug into your iPhone. It's a headphone that you need a special electrostatic amp for. You need all the bells and whistles to get this thing going. It's not just, so you're really doubling the price of it by the time you can actually listen to it. Because you can't just listen to it by itself. It doesn't.
Well, in fairness, there is a DAC or a Stax portable electrostatic energizer that can be picked up for about $1,500 that will run it reasonably well. Is that as good as it gets? No. You can go on up and spend a whole lot more money than that, and some of us have, much to our wives' dismay. But yeah, it can be made usable for less than double that price, but you are going to have a substantial investment in the hardware chain around it.
So, awesome. Well, I think any other thoughts from anybody on the portable headphone audio space? Well, we haven't got to DAPs yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are a couple of things I want to throw at one. The other, on the TWS side, props to Technics. I expected to be talking about the Bose, the Sonys, all the names that we've heard and all the sort of the usual suspects. Techniques.
What do you mean TWS?
True wireless.
True wireless. Your any wireless.
Earbuds.
Techniques came into the year as a relative, non-event. If you had looked at what they did in 2022 through 2024, you wouldn't have expected what you saw this year. And they came into the market this year with two that, one at the price point where they're competing with the Sonys and the Bose and that kind of thing and winning in a lot of cases. A very good little in-ear, and another at the high end that was, an exceptional in-ear. So from Techniques, that was an unexpected plus. I think that's one that deserves a shout out.
Yeah, and real quickly,
AZ100 or
the 100 would be the one in the Sony Bose price range. The 700 is the luxury item, and both are pretty neat little. And
the 700 is the wired one, right?
Yeah.
And they both have the ferrofluid driver that keeps everything like coherent and, eliminates distortion. Yeah, I was blown away by those AZ100s.
Yeah, so, that's what I'm saying.
I just wanted to give Chris the chance real quick because he got to go to to Japan for this, to see this before it even came out. And
by all means.
I was surprised when I heard you were going on this trip and I found out what the product was. I'm like, why would they send us on a trip that far just to listen to earbuds.
For a tiny
And
little
then
pair of earbuds.
when we found out like how good they were, it all made sense.
Yeah, no.
But
and I'm glad, Will, you got a chance to check them out as well. And I'm sorry that you couldn't go on the trip, but I was happy to take your place. They were a phenomenal pair, and still are a phenomenal pair of in-ear true wireless earbuds. The noise cancellation to me was excellent. I probably have not listened to all of the top tier true wireless buds that are out there, unlike you. But they're my go-to pair of earbuds for sure. And they keep getting better. What did they just got Auracast, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Like last week, they just got an update. So yeah, again, like the Denon, when you have products that have been out there for a while that the customer's already invested in, and you keep making them better just with free over-the-air updates, more power to you. And well done, Techniques, for making a splash like that. They really made an awesome. I mean, for me, the bass response in particular is just so solid for a pair of earbuds that I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, they're extremely good. And to Chris's point, there is go-to. Speaking as somebody who gets 1,000 of these a year to review, I bought a pair of the Techniques. So I mean,
wow,
that says plenty about them, I think. Wow. But yeah, that was an unexpected highlight, I think. And they're going to win a lot of best of, and they're going to come in the top 3 and a lot more if people have heard them. I think they were a real surprise this year, and they're certainly a plus. I'm looking.
And they're like less than 300, right? They're around like 279 or
249, I think.
249.
I think they were 249 for Black Friday. So yeah,
very affordable.
Yeah. And then in the DAP world, I think that was the high end stuff that we saw. The A&K has the 4000 out now that pushes that standard a little further into the stratosphere each time, and KN with their new again, I'm trouble with words today, but they're modular.
There's like so many model numbers we have to remember.
Yeah, I wasn't even looking for the model number, looking for modular. KN kind of went into that with the N6 of how do we make it interchangeable parts so that people can do different DAC chips, different things like that, and they continue down that path. But we saw kind of a reinvention out of KN of some of their classic series. We saw a new version of the N6, a new version of the N8. I think we're gonna. Well, N8 I think is still coming. I don't think it's released, but it's been making the rounds as far as the initial discussions.
So for anyone who doesn't know what a DAP is, that's a digital audio player. It's like the current version of an iPod, right? I mean, it's a digital audio player that you can store your music collection. Don't have to worry about multitasking on your phone. You get this dedicated device.
Not only does it store your music collection, that's one of the advantages. It's also most of them, or pretty much all of them worth anything today, have built-in streaming, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Subscribe to your favorite streaming services. Yeah, and I bring that up because what I found was, if I start trying to use my streaming service, one, got to go into airplane mode. There goes that. So you go over to your file selection, that kind of thing. But two, for a lot of us that are very heavily into music and that sort of thing, you find out how short a period of time your phone battery will last when trying to do all of these things.
Right, exactly.
The DAP is the way to still have your phone to be a phone when you need it and not have 2% battery left when somebody calls.
I've noticed real quickly kind of almost a crossover, like you were saying, from the DAP into a home streamer. They are getting closer to that becoming your home streamer is your DAP if you want to take it on the road with you.
That would make it so I would want to purchase it. That's cool. That's a good trend to say out loud. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, A&K has kind of had that product in their CA line that was kind of a crossover for that for a couple of years now. FiO's done a couple of them that are kind of fit into that niche as well. I think as your electronics continue to shrink, you're going to see that happen. Mm-hmm. But there's still an awful lot of the streaming segment of the market out there that cares nothing about portable. So are you ever going to see it completely coalesce? No. Are you going to see the portables try and take on more and more and more capability? Oh, absolutely. And like I said, now the idea that saying, well, it's a digital music player, you put your files on it, you play them. No, they've advanced an awful lot since the days of the iPod. And while that's still certainly a functionality, I know a lot of people that own them that use them just strictly with streaming services that don't have a single file stored on them because of the flexibility and the capabilities they have today.
How do you integrate it with your system? There's not a docking station, is there, like in the old days?
Yes.
I mean, how do you? Oh, there is.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are.
Oh, okay, great, cool.
A&K actually does that. FiO has some that have that bridge capability too.
Nice.
So there are several of them that are integratable if you want to. So
there's upgrades out there that are available from my Zune.
No, I don't think the Zune is going to make a comeback anytime soon, Mitch. Although what's interesting, you kind of bring up the retro point. We've hit iPod, we've hit Zune. We are Rewind and a few other places are bringing out, basically the 2025 version of the Walkman again. There's interesting cassettes, and they're back.
Yeah, portable CD players.
Yeah, so along with
Miss you, Jeremy at Budget Audiofiler.
I'll say along with our DAP, while we're talking about the digital audio players, the analog audio players, in form of cassette decks, are making a comeback in 2025, and there are a couple of different makes of those, and that's an interesting piece too. And what's really interesting about those is the sound quality on a lot of them is a lot better than it used to be, because they've solved some of the tape hiss problems and things like that, where it's
interesting.
Yeah, they're an improvement over the Walkman you probably had as a kid.
Yeah, physical media. That was a theme that we've also noticed as well, is the kind of the resurgence of that. I mean, we've been talking about vinyl for years now. That's not new to us. But speaking of vinyl and vintage, got to introduce our pulse of Instagram, Mr. Audio Love YYC, and his 165,000 followers, Eric Pye.
Yeah.
How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm still nowhere near Mr. Budget Audiofiler, who's steps ahead of me, but I'm on there a lot. And the reference to vinyl, I think, is a good segue, because one of the things, in terms of, if I was to comment on anything kind of industry-wise, it would be the continual growth of vinyl reissues. You've got your big players, and of course, I'm primarily focused on the jazz reissues, but you've got your traditional, your Tone Poets, and your acoustic sounds, and your analog productions, and your MoFis, and your craft recordings. But there's a lot of other players kind of coming in to this area. There's some that maybe are putting out a couple of reissues a year. You've got people like Kevin Gray, who's now started his own label and is doing not reissues, but new issues. But this kind of vinyl, what's the word? I'm having a will moment here. The really high fidelity audiophile reissues. So one that kind of comes to mind in all of that, there's a new one called Gamout Recordings that has had a single reissue so far. It came out about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Props to a guy on Instagram who's at WhatCanBrown. He's the brains behind this label, but they put out a reissue that is hands down one of the best I've ever seen. The cover on it's a Stoughton gatefold, but super high end. It's got like a multi-page booklet about the album. It's a Pepper Adams album, the Pepper Adams Quintet, and the people who have bought copies and shared it on the gram are just blown away by it, and the fidelity is amazing too. Then you have some of the box sets that have been coming out. Kraft just did a box set of Bill Evans's all the recordings with Scott LaFaro and Paul Motion, the kind of like the trio of trios for him. There's a Chet Baker box that came out with 5 albums that he recorded in the summer of '65 before he had his teeth knocked out. There's been some really amazing stuff happening in that area.
Oh man, yeah, it's not genre specific either.
No, I mean, and you have other players coming in. You've got like Rhino coming in.
Exactly.
You've got the the Buckingham Nicks reissue that came out earlier this year that had multiple colors and multiple versions and 2 different masterings. It's just gone crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, do you think people are buying them because they want to compare versions, or are they actually better and they're out of print and they just want access to them?
So good question. So one of them, the Buckingham Nicks hadn't been reissued since the original year, what was it, 73 that it came out. There have been no reissues since then. So that was one where, people have streamed it, they've heard it, they've got the CD of it or whatever, and they've been waiting and waiting for a vinyl copy because the only ones available were OGs that are super, super pricey. Some of the Bill Evans stuff that has come out on, the Craft Original Jazz Classics line. So I have quite a few of them where I've got multiple copies. So I think of, for example, Sunday at the Village Vanguard or Waltz for Debbie. I've got an older Japanese pressing of each of those, and then I've also got the new OJC. And I don't typically A/B stuff a lot, but a few weeks ago I did. I A/B'd the Japanese pressing and the OJC, and doing that, I was blown away at how much better the OJCs were than these older pressings. And I mean, the Japanese pressings are very, very good, but the OJCs just, they pop.
Right.
So I think there is a quality element to a lot of these. Certainly the Tone Poets have always impressed with their dynamics and body and all those things. We've had podcasts with Kevin and Joe about that stuff. So yeah, I think that's a trend that is just going to continue to grow, and you're going to get more and more people coming in.
And I do know you've had a particular speaker in your cave, you might call it. I'm not sure what the
Shag Palace is what it's called. The Shag Palace.
But yeah, talk to us about that. And I know we're going to have a special episode just dedicated to that. But
Shag is in carpeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a little too old for the other shagging in the music room. So Mitch and I just recorded.
Never too old for shagging, man.
Speaking of Mitch and I.
Yeah. So Mitch and I were not shagging earlier. Mitch and I just recorded a podcast about 2 hours ago with Dave Kelly of KLH. That'll be out probably in late January is what Mitch was saying. I got a pair of the new Eclipsa. Dave Kelly used to work for Eclipsa.
Exactly.
The KLH Model 7s, which are part of their kind of heritage style model lineup. They came out with the 5s in early 2021. They followed that up with a 3, which is a lot smaller. The 5 is a 3-way acoustic suspension closed box speaker. The 3 is a 2-way, and the 7 is another 3-way. I've been in love with the Model 5s for the last 4 years that I've had them. They're just such a clean, linear speaker that does all genres well. Can't really find a fault with them. And then I got the 7s in, and I was like, well, these are better. They're bigger. They've got a massive baffle. They're 1.5 feet wide. It's a 13.5-inch woofer, 5-inch mid-range, and then a tweeter. Very, very big speakers. I was blown away how big they were when I took them out of the box a couple of months ago. And I hooked them up, and just the speakers are big, but the sound is big too. And I was commenting to Dave earlier that, you don't hear the size of the room that you're in. You hear the size of the room that the recording was made in. You hear all of the acoustics of that room. You hear the nuances of sound. You hear the reflections of sound within that space. And the pinpoint placement of the instruments, that just blows me away as well. And they go really, really deep. They go down to 38 hertz flat, and then there's a 10 decibel drop off to 26 hertz. but a speaker that goes down to 26 hertz is giving you a lot. And I kind of joked with Mitch that if he ever comes to visit, we're going to throw on Yesterdays by Paul Chambers, the tone poet, and he will be absolutely blown away. And he salivated then, and I can see him having like post-salivation now. So yeah, I would say that's been the highlight of my audio journey this year. Standout product.
So the Model 5s were a reissue, right, of the classic Model 5?
Yeah, very closely based on the original Model 5 from the 60s.
Yeah, the 1960s.
The look is very similar. Dave was talking about the fact that Henry Close was very, very big on producing perfect sound, but not necessarily very big on producing perfect looking speakers. And so they did a lot of work to improve the looks of the speakers, and they look just superb. But yeah, that's based on there. And I think the Model 7 is a new speaker, but based on the designs of the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the cost on those, Eric?
The 7s are $6,000 a pair. The 5s are mid 3,000s, I think it was. They may be slightly lower when there's a sale. I think they have a sale on right now if you buy them before their Christmas delivery deadline or whatever the case may be. But that's kind of where they're standing.
And as a vintage guy, have you heard the original Model 5s in a good refurbished condition? Or
I have not. In Calgary here, vintage availability of vintage product is pretty low because back in vintage times, Calgary was a city of maybe 100,000 people. And Calgary is not really what I would classify as an audiophile mecca. I was saying to Dave that I had a KLHs on my kind of like wish list on eBay a few times. I'd kind of monitored them, but have never had the pleasure. I'm not.
And just to give some perspective, you've had vintage Klipsch in there, vintage Kef in there. What else has been in there?
I've had vintage ADS. I've had Bowers and Wilkins. I've had several pairs of those. I've got Energy 22s, which is like the Canadian speaker of speakers. I've had a lot in there. I still have the Klipsch Fortes, which are also a fantastic speaker. But the Fortes can fatigue you out a little bit with the horn, whereas the KLHs fatigue is not an issue. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Mitch, I do want to get to you. I know we're getting over time, and we haven't gotten your thoughts.
We'll see.
We haven't gotten your thoughts of the year. But yeah, what's happening in the world of all vinyl radio?
The world of all vinyl radio.
Black Circle.
A lot of. Oh man, I'm cutting a lot of music. I'm doing a lot of recording using the record lathe every week, multiple times, which is really cool. I'm still using that thing weekly. Sometimes, multiple, whatever. I just really I'm still doing that. I'm pleased with myself. Thanks for asking. But also new with Black Circle Radio is we got some new cartridges this year for both tables. It's the first changeover that I've had on cartridges used for broadcast in 5 years, I think. Because for like 5 years, I was pretty much strictly Samico. And then I was in a conversation with MoFi, and they sent me a pair in support of the program. And the ones were the MoFi UltraTrackers. And I think they're like $299, $399, right around there.
$350 now. We've had some more price increases to report since we started the podcast.
When I put those on, the first thought I had was, this is a cartridge that sells a lot of records. Like, if that's going on your table, if that's an upgrade, if that's like your first upgrade, you're going to notice it right away. Like immediately. And the cartridge is fast, man. Like it's the attack on the output of that cart, it's a moving magnet. I don't know. It's like just Roadrunner. It's like Roadrunner. It's so quick, so gone. And I really, exactly. Thank you. I really enjoyed the speed of it. It's definitely faster than the Semikos. The part, I can't remember if the stylus is replaceable on the UltraTracker. On the Semiko it is, and that's like, I broke a lot of styluses.
I think it is, Mitch, because when I was searching for it, it came up that there was a stylus option. So I hope
that's
my memory
really cool.
is right on that.
Yeah, that's cool. But anyway, I just thought it's called an UltraTracker, and it does live up to the name. I don't know if it got published or not in the written review, but I said I wouldn't have held it against MoFi if they called it the UltraTracker AF, because it just plows. It doesn't plow into your record. It's like a snow plow or, an icebreaker. It just pushes all that crap out of the way, and it just leaves the music. And and I've physically seen it push stuff out of the way.
That's the middle model in that line too. So I was thinking there was the studio tracker was like $179, $200. Then the UltraTracker was in at $350 or so, and then there's a master tracker above that. That's I think,
and the master tracker AF. Don't forget that one.
And the Ultra Master.
Yeah, as I say, so if the middle one does that well,
it would just have to be called the Ultra AF.
You need to introduce a shag tracker.
Shag tracker. That's it. Yes, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, baby.
Maybe you
full
can
black
partner with
circle.
MoFi.
But that thing has been a ton of fun. Really, really pleased. It's higher output. I have not measured it. That is my body's physical response to receiving the sound, is that it is a hotter output out of the box than the Semikos are. I think it'd be incredible if I was wrong on that. If my body was opposite of the of the facts, I would like that. But that cartridge has been so much fun. Highly recommend. That has been great for the program. It's been inspiring. Just totally different palette. So that's been really cool. And then the other product that I really, really dig on is ray tubes. And we did, Eric and Jeremy and I did an episode recently where we talked all about valves. And that was amazing. And ray tubes came into that conversation. And ray tubes is they're not necessarily a manufacturer. They're like a curator of tube manufacturers, and they find the best of the best out of those facilities that meet their criteria. And then, essentially like a reseller, but I've been interested to talk about this with Will on a podcast, so I'm pretty excited about it. But one thing that is super notable before I talk about it, the sound is great. It just sounded really clean. I didn't have any issues. It was big. It was matched. My headphones were really balanced. I did notice just a little bit of a wider stereo image. And then it's the same reference. I'm using the linear tube audio MZ3.
Which tube?
I'm using where are they? I'm using the 6SN7s. And with 12AX7 preamp. But and it's I can't remember if this. Oh wait, is this it right here? I got the box. It's the 6SN7 reserves. So that's like their highest end version of those. And
are they branded ray tube, or do they have the original brand like Sovtech?
They're branded ray tube.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that is notable, I appreciated the wider stereo image. When I'm talking wider, I'm maybe talking 1-2 degrees each side. So it wasn't like huge, but I noticed it because I listened to that amp every day. And so that was notable. And then the other thing was that they give a 1-year warranty on tubes, and I've worked at guitar shops and music stores and bought HiFi. I've got a lot of tube equipment. I've talked to Will about tubes. Will has sent me tubes, valves. That's the first time I've seen a 1-year warranty on glass, and very appreciated. So they're not cheap, but they also are the first ones that I've seen to have a warranty. So that's groovy. Yeah. And if a tube's gonna go bad, like bad, it's probably gonna fail within that first year, if not that first week. So
that certainly gets rid of a lot of your headache, and there are some that lose vacuum slowly over time, but that takes care of a lot of the failures. The thing I would say is you picked the absolute right one to be the poster child there too, because the 6SN7 has been used in absolutely everything over the years. And what that means is there's a ton of them out there on the market in the new old, that are labeled new old stock or that kind of thing. And the quality varies from really good to really horrible. And if you're not somebody that has all the test equipment and things like that, going out and looking for those, I want to find an old set of RCAs or, Brimars or whoever, it's a crapshoot. If you don't have the test equipment to really make sure what you're getting, it's easy to get ripped off. So to have somebody that guarantees it for that price, warranties it for a year, things like that, if you're not going to get into it to a point where you have the tube testing equipment and things like that, it's a good, safe way to spend your money.
It's exactly what we talked about when we did the episode, where there's enough things to tinker around with, and tube chasing it's chaos. Because if you it's just too big of a risk for the money. I mean, used quote unquote new old stock tubes, I mean, they're not cheap to experiment with. It's a real, I don't know. Will, what do you think about this statement? New old stock and vintage tubes is the biggest gamble in HiFi in 2025.
Maybe vintage turntables are there with it. I think Eric can speak to that, and that there's a lot of people selling a lot of junk for big money these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right that if you want to get ripped off, go into tubes with the idea being that I'm just going to spend my money on whatever looks good. That'll ensure you don't have much money for very long.
Well, speaking of tubes, were there any breakthrough tube oriented products this year? Because nobody really touched on a product.
I mean, as far as tube goes, I mean, there's been innovations and people trying the solid state, the GAN tube stylings, or the solid state hybrid type thing, and you can put a EL34 and a KT88 slot with this adapt. I mean, I don't play with those things. I just
anything?
Do what the manufacturer says.
No, I think the big news for really the end of the last year and this year has been the tube market has basically been hit really hard, in that you had a lot of the tubes that were coming out of Russia. Pretty much all of your
JJ and Sovtech.
Oh, and Millard Reissues, and basically there were entire stores that were selling 6 brands of tubes, and all of them were coming out of the same factory in Russia.
Correct.
And, so you've got not only the tariff hit on the ones that are coming out of China and other places, but you have the Russian ones that are now embargoed. So the tube market in general took a huge step backwards as far as availability because of the tariffs and because of the political situation. So I think that was the big thing for this year as far as tubes goes.
Well, that said, though, at the same time, I mean, we've seen the big, huge rise in the efficiency and the output, and also the sound quality of Class D amplification. But I would also say that vacuum tube amplifiers right now are as relevant as they've been in my career lifespan.
Well, you just hit 2 very different points, though.
I'm allowed to. It's my turn.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is Class D amplification and talking about the efficiency and that kind of thing, absolutely. But people who are buying tube amps never bought them for that to begin with.
No, of course. I'm just saying they're rising at the same time. Yeah, and I think that's of note.
Pure Class A, B, on the outskirts on a few of them, but efficiency and tube, no, those two just don't go together.
No, of course not. That's not. No, space heaters aren't very efficient for the most part.
I agree that there's a portion of the population where I think nostalgia plays a huge role. And I'm a tube guy, and I admit it. I like what the sound that a tube produces, and it is technically distortion. And you get some people look at it and say, "Why would you do that to your music?" Well, because it's pleasing. Exactly. And to each their own. But yeah, I do think that when you start comparing Class D amplifiers to tubes, you're talking about a nostalgia product on one side and an efficiency technology product on the other.
Well, I think you're talking two very different markets too. You guys may be aware, my wife moved back to Japan in the summer. And so I set her up with a little system, and she's not an audiophile at all. So I picked her up a little Fosi Class D amplifier, which is hooked up to a pair of my giveaway Realistic Minimus 7 Woody speakers. And she just bought herself a JBL spinner turntable that I'm going to be hooking up when I'm there at Christmas time. And that's her audio system. It's great. But this little Fosi, her first comment was, "Oh my God, it's so cute. I like the little meter on it," because it's got one of those circular meters on it. And not a comment about the sound, but it's functional and it does what she needs, right? Yeah. And for somebody, that thing cost me like probably $80 for that kind of price. She's completely happy. The kind of person who's going to go for an amp like that is not a tube customer, I don't think.
No, not at all. I mean, no, that's not what I was just saying. You have 2025 technology that is like here, and we're seeing it for the very first time, and you're still seeing 1903 technology being relevant in 2025. Right. So I think that's really groovy.
No, 1930s. Technically speaking, but close.
Thank you.
Next up, the resurrection of the wax cylinder.
I have a dictaphone.
Wax cylinders.
I have a
what? Dictaphone?
I do. Yeah. But those are my picks, Brian.
No, thanks. I mean, I'm going to take us on a complete U-turn here from the U-turn from tubes to analog all the way into cutting edge digital.
Soundbar. No, not the soundbar?
Yeah, this is my product of the year.
Okay.
And this is the Canvas HiFi soundbar. And to hear me talk about it, I will sound like a crazy person because to explain this thing doesn't make sense. It looks like a soundbar. There's a speakers that are in a box, one box. You put the box on the floor. You plug it into the wall. You connect HDMI or you connect through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or Spotify Connect. That's it. You plug it in, turn it on, and the thing sounds like floor standing speakers with stereo imaging that goes wider than your room and goes up to the ceiling and wraps around you. Doesn't make any sense that one speaker can do this. I know Chris is laughing. I've heard it.
I think it did sound very impressive. I'm with you.
And it's based on this new technology called Bacch 3D, where it's doing cross-phase cancellation. Right? It's making sure your left ear only hears the left speaker and the right ear only hears the right speaker. And it cleans up a lot of the crosstalk, I guess you might say. It just has a way of cleaning up the presentation and spatializing it in a way that adds depth that seems impossible from one speaker to do. So, I mean, it plays deep bass down to 30 hertz. I mean, you don't need a subwoofer with this thing. It is amazing. And I don't know why this Bacch 3D technology hasn't been implemented anywhere else. It's only available through this one speaker right now. There are some you might call kit versions you could buy if you're savvy with the Mac Mini, or you want to spend upwards of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for the DAC all-in-one version. But this is an all-in-one speaker for 4,500 is the standalone version. 5,000 is the version with an integrated TV stand, which gives you this seamless look. It looks like a Bang & Olufsen quality system. They're getting sued by Bang & Olufsen, which
Looks
is
a little too
of-
much like a Bang & Olufsen.
which is a whole
Speaking
other
of-
side story. But if this product was sold by any high-end brand, they would be charging $20,000 for it. This is a $5,000 all-in-one speaker box solution that I've been impressed with, and it's just hard to explain.
Do you have one?
I do have one. I've been using it all year.
Sweet.
I've been putting it in. I got to hear it in a couple different shows. So we got the initial demo, but I've been putting it on the floor, raised it up off the floor. It has these interchangeable grills. That's the other. This thing just adds on some really, really nice touches. These interchangeable grill comes in fabric or wood, and it lines up seamlessly with your TV. So if you place it,
installed it with the TV?
I didn't install it with the TV because I didn't.
So you didn't mount the TV on the.
I didn't mount the
canvas
TV.
stand. Okay.
I mean, we've seen it mounted, like we saw.
Yes, we have, and it looks seamless. It looks like it's part of the TV.
It looks like an
It's all
all-in-one
integrated.
TV solution.
Yep.
Where the speaker is just kind of hidden under a panel under the TV, and it does all of the same magic. There is one caveat, though, to this magical soundscape that it does, is that it's really tuned for one seat.
Right.
That one seat has to be the right distance, and you set that in the app. I didn't go over this. I'm probably giving the whole review right now of the whole thing, but there's an app and da-da-da. But anyways, that's the short and sweet of it. I don't want to
you can have two listening positions. They just have to be one in front of the other. So that kind of gets in the way of
You
snuggling.
just have to sit on each other's laps.
Yes, that works too. Yep. And see what
Rely on top of each other.
Multiplayer.
So that's something. It's technically a sound bar. It's also a wireless speaker. I may even classify it as an on-wall speaker if you wanted an on, because it does have a wall mount. So these are kind of three solutions where I think it blows away the competition in those three areas. I mean, if you're not in the sweet spot, it doesn't sound as great, but it doesn't sound horrible. Like it doesn't like drop off dramatically, like it goes dark. It just kind of fades off a little bit. Almost like if you look at a TV that's not an OLED and you move to the side, you're going to lose some contrast and some picture quality. Similar to that. Like you can still listen, you can still watch. It's just a single sweet spot. So the Bacch 3D technology, I got to hear a demo of that at the THE show with floor standing electrostats. And that may be kind of my breakthrough technology of the year, because what they were able to do was better than Dolby Atmos can do. They can pierce the 3D space, so you can go in and out. Whereas kind of Dolby Atmos is really sound all around you. This Bacch 3D technology, at its ultimate, is able to move sound closer to you and farther away. It could whisper in your ear. It could go to the back of the room. You could get that sense of space like you do with normal hearing.
Interesting. We didn't do a podcast with Bacch 3D, right? We haven't done one yet.
Okay.
But that's my thoughts on.
You'd probably want to get the professor for that.
We do want to get the inventor of that technology.
Yeah, that'd be really cool
to do the deep dive into that. But
now there's also a version of the canvas that's integrated with Samsung. Is it Frame TVs? It's got a Frame HiFi or something like that they showed in Europe, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're really thinking about the design element of how this gets used in a home. They make an all-in-one frame that includes the speaker and the TV, all in one kit.
Is that available in the US or is it only in Europe right now?
It's supposed to be coming early 2026 from what I've been told. But yeah, like you said, it will work with any TV from what I've told. it's designed to work with the Samsung frame, but it will work with other Samsung models. And I know it was demoed in 2025, so I don't know how the 2026 model dimensions are going to line up to this unit. But yeah, really well designed, well engineered. Can't speak highly enough of Canvas HiFi, Canvas frame, the Bacch 3D technology. Yeah. So yeah, all right. As we wrap up this, I kind of went a little bit too long on what I wanted to talk about, but it's all right. Any closing thoughts as we wrap this up?
Man, other than it's been an interesting year, no.
Yeah,
so many levels.
Yeah. I'll see what I mean. I guess my only thing to say is, what year did we start this? Did we start the podcast in 21?
21.
About, yeah.
Yeah.
And so 4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of changes, and I really am glad that we get to keep talking about those changes together. That's special to me.
Amen,
so
brother.
That's cool. So thanks. And thanks everybody for listening too. It's neat to watch it grow. So that's a good thing. I'm looking forward to 2026 conversations for sure. All the above.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. We want you to like, subscribe, comment wherever you are. And let us know in the comments. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.